Alright guys, welcome back to Valorant News. One of the biggest scandals in the history of Valorant may have just been uncovered. A huge match-fixing ring in the Tier 2 scene. Gen.G says that when all this stuff comes to light, it is going to be such a huge day in the Valorant world. And in his opinion, we need to burn this whole scene down to build it back up again from scratch. These elements have been going on behind the scenes apparently for some time. And now over the last 12 hours or so, everything has come to light. And it's complete chaos here in the Valorant scene. Hundreds of thousands of dollars getting thrown around to throw matches in the Tier 2 Valorant scene. There is a lot that we have to get into today if this is true. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. This, of course, is the famous iBuyPower CS team from back in the day. And, well, they were involved in a match-fixing scandal to the tune of a few $1,000s. We are talking on this sense about something far, far bigger than that indeed. And this is going to be potentially a watershed moment in even maybe the esports space, but certainly in the Valorant world if what Gen.G believes he has uncovered is absolutely right, and it's difficult to doubt him based on the evidence that we are about to unfold. Now, some roster drama to quickly run through. KOI, they've confirmed their new team. As I say, I'm just going to run through these roster changes pretty quickly because we do have bigger fish to fry today. Loud's confirmed that Toys is gone from their team. Interestingly enough, if you go to the EWC qualifier, Loud have been removed. I don't think they have a roster that's eligible to play or able to play in time for the qualifiers starting tomorrow. So actually no, they start tonight. They're just late my time. So they literally can't field the roster. So anyway, this is the bracket for the Americas qualifier. 100T Furia, Liv NRG, Crew are going to get a bye, and C9 2G because Loud aren't even playing. So that's the story there. Furia, they have basically benched their whole team. So Prize has gone, I think, back to 2G. Now Khalil, Havoc, Rafa and their coach are under contract, but they're able to listen to proposals. So basically they are just axing the entire squad. But let's talk about the drama. So, this is a roster change that I thought was going to be the story of the day, and that was Marved back on a team, potentially. So we can see here that G2 is scrimming M80. Now, M80, it's obviously a bit of a mess over there, right? As we know, they have sold, we believe, Okonos and Sato to Leviathan. Maybe they're even going to do a merger between those two organizations. We talked about that rumor yesterday. But for now, they still have the playoffs to play, and they still need a roster for it. Marved has indicated on occasion over the last couple of years his intention to come back to competing, and that seems to still potentially be a thing. Here's Victor and Marved as a duo yet again, spotted scrimming against G2. So, really cool story if this is true, that Marved is back scrimming with the team. This, of course, a higher quality screenshot. So, look, it might not last for long, as we've seen in the past, especially if M80 are set to depart the scene very shortly, and we'll discuss more on M80 here in just a second. But supposedly Giza, Victor, Marved and Caillou, not sure who the fifth is, maybe Weeded or Bao. Seems like the M80 pug roster for playoffs as they're exiting the scene. So seems like Victor maybe gave a call, maybe Chet gave a call to Marved and said, hey, we need a fifth just for a bit of fun, play for a stage and then you can dip out after another week or so. Maybe that is what is going on. But this is the big drama of the day. So yesterday we talked about this tweet. Funhaver confirming that it just doesn't make sense to stay around in Tier 2 and deciding to leave Tier 2 and part ways in that sense. Then Timothy comes out and says, I'm going to go live and talk about everything that's going on in Tier 2. You will not want to miss this. And that's when the things really start to kick off. We get Dapper putting this out there. This, of course, is from that famous iBuyPower throw where Still manages to somehow not shoot and miss the orb shots. And look, it was the most famous example of match fixing ever. The guy's got bans for years. But as Gen.G said in his video that he did on this topic last night, they were throwing games for the sake of $700 skins. The games we're talking about in a second, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially on the line here. And that makes things really rather interesting. So this is effectively what happened. So thanks to Takumi for putting this together here, breaking down what happened on the stream. Because the Gen.G stuff happens a little bit later, because Tim from Funhaver starts this whole thing off basically. So He talks about the issues with Tier 2. Riot's main KPI, which is key performance indicator for challenges, is the number of players that get promoted from Tier 2 to Tier 1. Problem is that the last 2 years this has been heavily skewed. There's only been a couple of new Tier 1 players, not counting previous signed pros that have come back in. Riot doesn't care about spending money in the league. They won't fund it because they don't want to. They want TOs to pay the cost to run their own league, which is a bad deal for the TOs. Tim submitted a proposal that would cost them more money than Liga Ace, but they got the deal because apparently they got lowballed. So sensational. Allegedly, they offered an amount so low that barely covers the prize pool and some production, not even the operating cost. 4 matches a day, half of those rounds observed by people who leave the game or don't actively even watch. Horrible as a viewer. So, just terrible organisation, basically. Expects to get pulled from running tournaments by Riot after making this stuff public. Tim's number to Riot was 500k total, running costs, etc. Huge viewership drop-off. This, though, is then where things get really dramatic. So he talks about Liga Ace a bit more. He talks about org issues, saying QR was a Nepo org. People got dropped for wanting to drop Snarly. They're pulling out over money concerns. M80 is in the same boat. Financial trouble, money has been mismanaged. Orgs are looking to exit Valorant entirely due to mistrust of Riot in the system. Bunch of rosters are in a weird spot. This, though, is when things get crazy, right? So, this is already a pretty good crash out. But then, this is, the biggest line in this whole thing. There's a lot of stuff here, but this is the biggest line. Active Riot employee, and I'll share the clip of this in a second, high up in the anti-cheat department, is being paid off to let people cheat. Bettors are offering huge amounts to match fix games, even in the regular season. There are likely teams that would take the money even if it was to ruin their career, because how else are you going to make money in this scene? Win trading is a thing in ranked, also in matches. Widespread cheating or closet cheating is going on. So, this is a huge deal. We've talked about it for some time, crypto throwing in ranked, right? You join a lobby with a pro, you throw the game, somebody bets on the game because you can, bet crypto on these ranked games and win money. But obviously on the actual proper matches, the same thing is always possible. And it seems like this has been, would it be a surprise if players are throwing matches for money? No, it happens all over the place, especially in tier 2 ecosystems around the world of esports and of course in sports. Is it a surprise that someone at Riot might be getting paid off to allow this to happen and turn a blind eye? That's where we're talking. Things get pretty crazy. So this is the clip. I just wanted to share the Twitch clip here of him basically revealing this to the public.
However, it gets kind of worse because there is an active Riot employee that is very high in the anti-cheat department being paid off to let people cheat. And I have proof of this. I have seen it, and it is a very real thing. I can't share that, and I don't know if that's being investigated right now or not. But that is a problem. Because if somebody at Riot is employed in the anti-cheat department and letting people cheat, that creates a problem. And you have individual players who are actively cheating. And Riot employees know about it, and they're being paid to not do anything about it.
So then Sean Gares comes in and says, let's not talk about this because I've been trying to investigate it. Basically, he says that he blew open a case he'd been working on for a week. Shut your mouth, wait until I drop the hammer. And, so Sean Gares is obviously annoyed here because he's been presumably working on this and has heard about this and has been working to dig into the details for now a couple of weeks or whatever. And then Funhaver is just going to drop it all out there. What you're saying right now is 1% of what's happening. But, at the end of the day, they're on the same side. And I think they came to an agreement to say, you know what, we're not, there's no point fighting each other precisely. But Sean's like, look, don't leak any more of what's happening here because, I'll leave. Now, Sean Gares then does a few tweets. The whole scene is rotten to the core. Can't wait to show everyone. I'll burn it to the ground. Look, when a guy like Sean Gares, who is one of the, calmest, most reasonable gentleman of the esports scene, but is a man, in my understanding, in my belief anyway, with a very strong personal integrity. When a man like Sean Gares is saying that I will burn this scene to the ground to make it back to what it was, what I found is disgusting. I think that's enough for many of us to recognize that, there's some serious issues afoot here, because like these are very, very strong words from Sean, and he wouldn't say this if he wasn't convinced that this stuff is happening on a serious level. So Sean did a couple of messages, because obviously everything blew up because Tim Funhaver did his, he did his broadcast. And then Sean Gares was like, well, I guess I've got to talk about some of this stuff publicly. I'm super angry about this. Wish I had more time. It wasn't even my reach outs that caused this leak. It's frustrating that this leak happens, that he was doing this investigation. Other people are investigating too. Plans for the weekend, he says. So, we'll resume this, I imagine, shortly. He mentioned as well, look, I found this massive underground match fixing ring in Tier 2. He then did a video where, he was obviously pretty emotional about this whole situation. Spoke to the camera about 6 minutes. Like, he avoided saying any names or anyone specific yet. He does confirm here that Riot are doing their own investigation, others are doing their own investigation as well, and this has been ongoing now for a little bit of time. But effectively what he says is like, stay tuned, there's more to come here, right? Like, and we are going to be talking about this a lot. But then he mentioned some of the figures and says, yeah, we're talking 6 figures on some of these matches, and the level of match fixing and betting and like crypto scams or whatever like you want to call it, really, that we've not really seen anything quite on this scale in the esports world for some time, maybe ever, certainly not in the Valorant world. So, it's all going on, right? And Sean Gares obviously puts this out there. Asuna says, grabbing the popcorn ready for this one. FNS comes out and does some good impression farming, says we're still throwing because, look, this is not a new phenomenon to throw games to make money through schemes such as this. But for it to be this widespread, potentially, and for so many people to be getting involved, and as Sean made clear in his video that, once you accept something like this, all of a sudden, you find yourself rather under the thumb, and it's kind of, you get involved in the ring, and all of a sudden you really have no other option than to sometimes continue in that regard. As Zom says, if anyone knows anything about Valorant match fixing, please report it to me so I can send it to the authorities. Zekan's commenting on the situation as well. Even Exalt says, I can't wait to see it all unfold. So there's just so much happening. I mean, even Dapper talked about it now a couple of years ago and says the writing was on the wall for franchising. Valorant's got a dying Tier 2 scene. And I mean, look, is this the same thing that Dapper was talking about? Not necessarily, but even Prod continues on and says, depending on how many people get kicked from Tier 2, I might have to go pro. So that might be where this is going, because VCT Scrims did a tweet, which is since deleted, but it was this guy Chunk, who, again, got a controversial character, but Chunk put out a list of players in his Discord that he believes are cheating. Now, the list has been deleted, and I wasn't really going to share it anyway, because I thought, it's probably not right to do so before there's actual proof. But let me just say that Chunk's list here was probably 30 players long, maybe more, something like that anyway. And these are notable players. These are players that you would have heard of from the Tier 2 scene. Like, these aren't players that, have never been in the conversation, right? That are Tier 3, Tier 4, like whatever, right? It's not like that. These are big names. If this potentially is actually true, Chunk says that of those names, he has absolute concrete proof behind all of these claims. And, so it's pretty madness. That's effectively what we have for today. I mean, this article goes on to say even more, like there was more situation happening as well on EWC, Tier 3 orgs getting scammed, Scrim VODs getting leaked, like there was lots of stuff talked about, obviously, drama with the Premier system and all this. But the reality is that the big story is about the potential cheating going on and the match fixing stuff. And I'm not really sure which one is actually worse. I mean, like, the match fixing stuff is outrageous, but it's not exactly a surprise, right? Like, am I shocked that people are fixing matches in, throwing games in order to do the stuff in Tier 2? Like, not really, right? Like, it's been a thing for a while. I think it's more shocking, the idea that some players are literally cheating down there, but yet they're getting paid off, like apparently anyway. Some people in the anti-cheat department or someone individual is getting paid off to turn a blind eye so these accounts get whitelisted and don't get bans. And, I mean, man, there's a lot going on here. And as Xander says, this is the juiciest drama that the NA Valorant scene will ever see. And we mentioned it the last couple of days. There was drama in China. There was drama in Europe. There was drama in the Pacific. And here we are with our yearly massive drama in the North American scene, certainly in the Challenger side. And Gazer, look, guys, this isn't what I meant, but this is the reality that we have. So that's what we know for now. I'm sure over the coming days there'll be more to come. Sean Gares will put together some sort of CoffeeZilla style video, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that. But yeah, that's where we're going to leave it for today. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.